of most importance. I think it's important to say it to the individual, particularly in a group dynamic setting, and especially in a game of football, especially for the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Brian Westbrook is with us this morning. Brian, good morning. Let me start with you. Are you surprised that players in Dallas are anonymously ripping Mike McCarthy and his coaching staff, if you will?
No, I'm not surprised at all. You know, there's been some issues in Dallas since the beginning of the season. They haven't really bought into what Mike McCarthy is selling at this point. And when you look at it, one of the things, and this is actually terrible for the Dallas Cowboys. It's good for my Philadelphia Eagles. This is terrible for the Dallas Cowboys. When you think about it, one of the first meetings that Andy Reid would have every single season was to say, listen, people outside of our building cannot help the people inside of our building, meaning the players, win games. They can't help us on the field, and they can't help us resolve things inside of our locker room. This is one of the worst things for the Dallas Cowboys. And I'll tell you, when things like this come out, things get worse. They don't get better, they get worse. If you handle these types of comments inside and internally, things have the possibility of actually getting better. And now think about this. If you're on that football team, you're only answering the question about what was said, who said this, who said that, and how do you guys move on from here? You're not answering the question about how do you guys get better and start winning football games. That means your focus is not on winning. Your focus is on things going on inside of the locker room. It's an absolutely terrible situation for Mike McCarthy and that football team. Again, it's really good for my Philadelphia Eagles.
Get that in there.
Yeah, you're happy right now, B. City. Are you celebrating what the Philadelphia Eagles are doing right now in this division? Really? Is that what's going on here?
They're in a better situation right now than the Cowboys. They're not. At least they're not fighting inside of the locker room.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, to be honest with you, this is why this team is not turning it around, because you have guys, and I'm going to say on the defensive side, not throughout the entire locker room, but on the defensive side, you know, going to the media, saying these things, and they probably have these little small groups in the locker room talking about what's working, what isn't working. And then you have other teams that just keep this stuff in-house. Like, you're a coward if you're going to the media and you're not putting your name on it. Now, I've been in this situation, unfortunately, before. There's been times where people had to reel me in, not because of what I said and I didn't put my name on it, because I stood up there and said, this is how I feel. But you got to protect the locker room. You got to protect your team. Because what Brian said, you can fix these things if you're only dealing with these things. But we talk about eliminate distraction, cancel the outside noise. I want to go through a few examples here, because I've been hitting up a few buddies, leaning on them, trying to get some intel. And this is what happens on the good teams. They're not, when I say good teams, maybe good locker rooms. I hit up the Philadelphia Eagles, somebody from the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm like, man, what's going on with Carson Wentz? And you know what their response to me was? They could have easily crushed Carson Wentz. They said Carson Wentz will be fine. We're not healthy. We'll get healthy and we will be fine. I hit up somebody for the Buffalo Bills after this last game, and I said, dang, what is going on? Trying to get some information. And the response was one word, onward. I hit up somebody from the Raiders when they beat your Chiefs, Nick, and I'm like, man, that was great. I saw what you guys was doing on the defensive side. Did you guys take anything from the New England Patriots? And it was crickets. They responded the first time, said, thanks, man, appreciate you hitting us up. Yeah, we really like what we did. And then when I asked some more, it was crickets. He didn't even respond. And then the last one was the Jets. I'm like, why would y'all trade Le'Veon Bell? And you know what they said? They said, you know what? It was just a bad fit. They didn't go out there and create any more headlines. They didn't do that because they're trying to keep things in-house. And that's what good teams try to do. And when I say good teams, I'm not talking about the record. I'm just talking about how you communicate and how things get cascaded down.
Two quick things, Jenna, before we move on. One is, Jay Glazer, if you're watching, it would appear your job is safe. Brandon does not yet seem to have the pull to really be able to draw things out of his sources throughout the league. Second of all, I mean, all the friends are like, I'm not talking to you. You're going to go on Inside the NFL and first things first and air out my team. I'm telling you nothing. Second of all, this is the quote that really stuck out to me. The anonymous player that said, they just aren't good at their jobs. If that player were standing in front of me, the question I would ask him is this. You got 53 players on your team. How many of them are good at their jobs based on this year? Who? Which Dallas Cowboy can we be like, he's been awesome? Dak was good. He turned the ball over a little too much, but then his ankle got broke, unfortunately. Alden Smith had one great game. The receiving core has a bunch of garbage time yards, and that's about it. Offensive line good. Defensive line good. Secondary good. Zeke good. Tight ends good. So if you're going to say the coaching staff's just not good at their jobs, Wildes, you might need to look to the guys in your own positional group and say, are any of us good at our jobs? Because through 6 games, there's no evidence of it.
Okay, I get it. And right, there's a lot of player stuff. They lead the league in giveaways. They lead the league in drop passes. Totally get it.
That's not good.
But Jenna, there's 2 ways to look at this. There's one, it's players venting. And like Brandon said, like you should keep that stuff in-house. The other way to look at it, and we don't know what this is that this is a strategic move to make a move on a coach. That this is going to create so many headlines, and it's so basic, like straight up, these guys aren't good at their jobs. Mike McCarthy said we were prepared for the Cardinals. That is straight up not true. And perhaps because of my standing, whoever said this, whatever player, I cannot go out and say this because I got a contract here, whatever it is. So it's either venting or strategic. I think it's personally more interesting if it's strategic, Jenna.
All right, so let's take that and run with it. We've already seen 2 coaches let go this season, right? We saw Dan Quinn in Atlanta. We saw Bill O'Brien relieved in Houston. So, Brian, do you think Mike McCarthy should be on the hot seat already in Dallas?
Absolutely not. And the only reason we're even talking about Mike McCarthy potentially being on the hot seat is because of the expectation of this football team. The expectation was you have Dak, you have Zeke, you have 3 quality wide receivers offensively. You should put up points. They've done that. They've also defensively have been as bad as they were last year, probably even a little bit worse. Mike McCarthy needs time. He needs buy-in. And usually a lot of buy-in, and Brandon, I think you know this, a lot of that buy-in comes during the OTAs, during training camp, when guys are together, when they're with the coaches and the other players. Unfortunately, this year we had COVID-19. They didn't have those opportunities. So I certainly think that another year or 2 to give Mike McCarthy the opportunity to get that buy-in is necessary. And when you mentioned Bill O'Brien and Dan Quinn, they've been in those places, Houston as well as Atlanta, for a very long time, not one season. And I think they have been unproductive in those places for a long time. You have to give Mike McCarthy much more time than he's gotten this far this season.
B, you're right, but the only buy-in that he needs to be working on right now is going into that locker room and telling those guys to keep their mouths shut. Now, and it's not just the players, it's also the coaches. I've been in organizations where the coaches were doing a little bit too much talking. There's always these anonymous sources and this source and that source. Come on, be a man, put your name on it. All right, if you want to say what you said, say it, but put your name on it. Because what happens is, instead of us focusing on how we're supposed to adjust to different formations when we're running quarters coverage, we're now talking about all these other things. Ray Lewis said something interesting last night on Inside the NFL when we were talking about defense. And I said, Ray, well, does it matter if the coach called this and the linebacker does that and the defense? And he says, Brandon, the reason why we need to communicate is because if we're all wrong, then we're all right. Okay, so which means I don't want my cornerbacks feeling okay about the game plan, my linebackers not feeling okay about it, and then all these little small groups forming, and we're talking about everything outside of football. Go to the coach and say, Coach, we don't like this. Have a man-to-man conversation. Coach Nolan, is there things that we can do differently? And then from there, the coach have to be able to accept what he's hearing, take the good from that, and make those adjustments. Don't be a coach that's going to sit there and just be stuck in your own way. Get the feedback from the player, take what you can, make the adjustments, make sure everybody in that locker room's on one page, and then you'll be able to be better and not make the same mistakes over and over and over again. They shouldn't be making the same mistakes during this point of the season, Jenna.
All right.